Long before humanity was born, the stars were already there. When we gaze up at their radiance, we're seeing only a fragment of time cast across the depths of the universe. Yet, small as we may be, we dare to dream of crossing that vast gulf of space. With our fleeting forms, we challenge that ancient silence. We will prove that the beyond is not unreachable, and that one day we will touch the stellar seas ourselves. That is the future I wish to reach, together with everyone.
So it's been a hot minute since I've done a resonator analysis, and with today's video we'll be taking a look into Mornye and her appearance in the recent story. While I did find it a little bit short, I think it was quite a great story actually. It gave us quite a lot of new information which definitely felt more linked towards the overarching plot of Lahairoi rather than focusing on Mornye exclusively. While a lot of fascinating stuff got revealed, it does also mean that a lot of stuff about Mornye's past, especially her past relationship with Rover, is still pretty up in the air, and we may only find out the full picture after everything is solved in Lahairoi. What we do have is still rather fascinating however, so I do hope you still all enjoy the video. As always, do be wary of spoilers if you haven't played the story already, and with that, let's get started. As is pretty much common now if you've been watching my Resonate analyses, we usually begin our foray with a look into the name of the character. Mornye is a bit interesting because I have two main theories for what her name may mean or allude to, so let's get through them. The first theory that we had, which actually was hypothesized months ago when Mornye's drip marketing first came out, was that her name was linked to the word Mornie from the Elvish language of Quenya within J.R. Tolkien's books such as The Lord of the Rings. Meaning darkness or blackness, this could possibly link to the idea of the infinite expanse of space, which as we see through Mornye's trailers is something that she tries to reach for. However, I don't particularly actually like this hypothesis because Mornye in Quenya has a bit of a negative connotation to it, being usually used to describe things such as evil and gloom. So instead, I actually much prefer my second theory. One of the things that struck me as I was watching Mornye's trailer that you couldn't really get from her drip marketing on Twitter was just how much ambition, idealism, and a sense of wonder and beauty was influential in crafting such a mathematically and scientifically inclined character. This led me to actually have a bit of a hunch that Mornye's name could tie her, in a way, to Claude Monet, the French painter which founded one of the most famous artistic movements in history, Impressionism. Now, if you think I sound absolutely crazy right now, I completely understand, but just hear me out for 1 second. If we look at Mornye's Chinese name, it doesn't actually really seem to reveal any new meanings to us. However, if we look at a Chinese name and the Chinese transliteration for Claude Monet, you'll notice that they use the exact same first character to transliterate their English names into Chinese. Beyond this, one thing that you need to actually understand is that Claude Monet's artistic style is actually very famous and widely taught within modern Chinese art. Oftentimes, within art schools, Monet is kind of the gateway that Chinese artists study in order to learn modern Western techniques, and the movement that he founded, being Impressionism, is one that advocates for expressing a subjective feeling of a scene rather than portraying an objective reality. As such, Impressionist paintings are very different and even look unrefined compared to Romanticist or Victorian ones, because they emphasize on expressing emotion, vivid colors, and capturing what a fleeting moment feels rather than looks like. This is something which is pivotal to modern Chinese art, that often focuses much more on emotions, atmosphere, and feeling, rather than hard lines and strict rules. I'll let Kramer Art's video on Chinese color theory, for example, speak a little bit about it so you can get a bit of an idea of the philosophy behind modern Chinese art.
While Western artists often obsess over perfect hue matches, Chinese artists tend to care more about capturing the mood and emotion of their subjects, using saturation and brightness. But what does that actually mean in practice? Well, instead of trying to decide if blue and orange are complementary enough, Chinese artists ask the most important question of all. What feeling do I want my viewers to feel when looking at my art? They then pick colors accordingly, not just based on hue, contrary to what we've mostly been taught. Instead, they mostly base it on saturation, which matters much more to the mood of a scene than you might expect.
What was also pivotal about Monet's Impressionism is that it focused not only on feelings but portraying normal and fleeting moments. Within Mornye's dialogue and lore, her relationship with the stars and the universe captures this essence perfectly. Her existence is imperceptibly small and minuscule compared to the grand scale of the universe, and within the expansive space, she was not shackled by inequality or her disability, because even amongst the stars, everyone was impossibly and equally small. This ideal that people, so small and fleeting, could even reach the sky and seek to conquer something like space is, if anything, impressionist. Such a desire is, much unlike what Mornye teaches and thinks, entirely rooted in feeling and emotion. We can see this ideal expressed even more clearly within Mornye's Resonator trailer. Within, we can see that she wishes to create an array of stars in the Hyroi, that the people underground, who could not hope to see real ones, could enjoy such a beautiful spectacle. Such an ambition is utterly impractical, as her fellow researchers told her, yet this want to chase for beauty, for the feelings of wonder that the stars provide, to create an illusion of the night sky and the stars underground, and ultimately to capture the beauty of a fleeting scene, is something that I find deeply impressionist. So while we can't really 100% confirm this link for sure, the rabbit hole I dived into to link Mornye and Monet is in a sense beautiful in its own way. One of the most touching parts of Mornye's character, which is expressed significantly in her lore, but really not so much in the Act 2 story of 3.0, was her obsession with stars. Stars are a deeply symbolic part of the natural world, and beside the significance of the ocean for the Renascitan questline, there probably hasn't been a more symbolic environment for a region ever since, which is something we'll be exploring this chapter and the next. While there isn't really a specific quote or anything that links Mornye's stars to some novel or specific culture this time, I think that stars have such massive literary value and depth that even those things aren't really necessary. One of the reasons for this is that stars are something that are universally experienced and valued in human cultures. For example, while there may not be some culture that have experienced the caress of the ocean, nearly every person has looked up once before to see the stars. As such, stars have always symbolized a kind of infinite possibility for humanity, an endless expanse where we are but a fleeting moment, as we talked about within Impressionism. In the quote at the beginning of this video, we already saw Mornye say that the stars are but a fragment of time. Beyond this, in the never-ending stretch of the cosmos, all is equal, all is insignificantly small. Within Mornye's backstory, the stars, she expresses this quite succinctly. She, her father, her mother, her classmates back home, and this person next to her. Beneath the boundless night, they were nothing more than dust drifting on a single planet. As someone who was born disabled, For Mornye, this kind of holistic equality means a lot more than to someone who's always had a patch to stand on. However, beyond this, Mornye's aspiration for the stars seems to extend beyond just her own personal desires. Her desire for humanity to reach for the heavens is something that she is not alone in wishing. Within the Star Torch Academy map lore, as well as other lore entries, we learn from Scott Rebel that reaching for the stars within the world of Wuthering Waves is not so simple, with the atmosphere having been cloaked by the etheric sea. Reaching for the stars is, as such, an act of both ambition and defiance. If humans have been ravaged by the Lament, trapped by the etheric sea, and live within the clutch of chaos, then stars can act as little lights within the darkness of the void. As such, Mornye's wish to become the first star to guide everyone, and her promise to Rover and what I think was her wish to the old Rover when she was still a student, to see the sun, is almost prophetic in its own way. We see within Act 2 of the 3.0 story that she fulfills that promise, launching Helios with her own two hands. One of the references for Mornye that we can definitively point out lies within her combat animations and trailers, where in Solarian script you can read the quote, "We are made of star stuff." This is one of the most famous quotes from Carl Sagan, an American astronomer and scientist who worked on the Voyager missions, made the TV series Cosmos, which remains one of the most popular TV series in the history of the world, by the way, amongst many other things. His arguably most famous quote, which Mornye takes to heart so much it's displayed in her combat animations, fits very nicely what we've just talked about with her character and beliefs in regards to stars. Just like how Mornye loves the fact that people are infinitely small compared to the universe, and have almost been bound by an intrinsic desire to reach for the stars, Sagan echoes this same sense of wonder. We have, after all, been made of nitrogen, oxygen, carbon, made of star stuff. We are but a small speck in the overall weave of the universe. However, this is not the only Sagan reference I think Mornye makes reference to in her kit. Her final node of her resonance chain, named To the Far Shore of the Stars, I think is heavily inspired by the name on the first episode of Sagan's acclaimed TV series Cosmos, that we just talked about, called To the Shores of the Cosmic Ocean. Within this first episode, Sagan opens by introducing Earth and humanity as a tiny shore amidst the vast ocean of the universe, which, as you can probably tell by now, lines up with everything we've been talking about with Mornye. It is our duty as explorers, spacefarers really, to sail the cosmic seas.
The size and age of the cosmos are beyond ordinary human understanding. Lost somewhere between immensity and eternity is our tiny planetary home, the Earth.
What's really interesting about this episode name additionally is that Sagan first mentioned this quote, To the Shores of the Cosmic Ocean, in his commentary for when he was on the research team for the Voyager 1 probe, which contained the legendary Voyager Golden Records, a set of discs that were prepared in case an alien species ever found the probe. If you've been a long-time watcher, or you're even attuned to the lore of Wuthering Waves, you will know that this is far from the first time that Curran's made reference to both the Voyager 1 spacecraft or the Golden Records it holds. Upon completing the Black Shores photography event amidst the stars, you would have received the achievement, Pale Blue Dot, a reference to one of the most famous pictures from space when the Voyager 1 probe snapped a photo of Earth from a distance of 6 billion kilometers, showing how insignificantly small Earth was in relation to the cosmos. Additionally, Shorekeeper's cherished item, We Are One, is a near one-for-one reference to Golden Records carried by Voyager 1, which we explored in our Shorekeeper video, which you can watch here. In fact, Shorekeeper's Golden Record even has a line that reads, "The Shorekeeper preserved her duet with Rover at the end of this record. To her, this melody is proof of their existence. This in itself is a reference to Adrienne, who was the creative director of the Golden Records and inserted a 1-minute audio clip of her brainwaves into the discs. Of course, what's important to note is that Carl Sagan and Adrienne later got married, and the relationship was immortalized in the naming of 2 stars, 2709 Sagan and 4970 Adrienne, which orbit the Sun in a wedding ring pattern. With all this in mind, it's really not all that surprising in the slightest that with so many references to space, they would reference the Voyager, Sagan, and all of this again with Mornye. While Mornye doesn't reference as much literature and culture as other resonators, it may not be fully surprising that she does excessively use scientific references in her kit. There's quite a few, and I'll try to go through each of these in layman's terms, so let's get started. Mornye's forte circuit, mass energy equivalence, as well as her gameplay which is focused on recovering and expending mass energy, is actually a reference to Einstein's famous equation, E=mc², where mass and energy are treated as interchangeable concepts, because mass is actually a concentrated form of energy, meaning energy is capable of converting into mass and vice versa. Considering that Mornye builds up rest mass energy in order to unleash a charge heavy attack, I suppose that you could say that she is essentially converting energy into mass. Mornye's heavy attack, called Geopotential Shift, refers to a change in gravity resulting in a shifting in geopotential height, which in itself is the amount of work that needs to be generated in order to lift up any object. This makes a lot of sense here because Mornye's wide field observation mode, which is airborne, can only be accessed when she casts her heavy attack and leaps into the air. Syntony is a bit of an old term within electrical sciences, which describes when 2 electronic circuits basically share the same resonant frequency. While this isn't fully relevant to Mornye's kit, we know that within the world of Wuthering waves, resonance and frequencies are very important concepts. It's a bit of a pun here because these concepts mean different things in electronics, but considering that Mornye's Syntony field gives a bunch of team buffs to other resonators, it's essentially sort of like matching wavelengths for efficient energy transfer if we apply the electrical theory to game mechanics. Mornye's off-tune response attack, Particle Jet, is based on a real jet in particle physics, which is when 2 particles smash against each other, knocking out the fundamental parts of it like a gluon or a quark. As these are basically banged out of the original particle, they also rubber band on each other because they are still bound to the original. This sort of rubber band of energy eventually breaks at multiple points, and the energy that comes out of this breakage creates hadrons, which travel in the same direction as the original gluon or quark, which was initially banged out of the particle. It forms a cone-shaped burst of particles, which is typically called a particle jet, and is basically why Mornye's tune rupture response of the same name is basically just one instance of big fusion damage. So this is a bit of a confusing one, as it's comprised of 2 parts. So I think I'll discuss entropy first because we know definitively what that is. Entropy is essentially a kind of measurement for how much disorder or randomness or chaos is in any sort of system. To provide the simplest example, flipping 1 coin has lower entropy than 2 coins, because the latter has more potential variables and as such more randomness. Since Mornye focuses a lot on space, I'm going to assume that the entropy here refers to the second law of thermodynamics, which states that in energy transfer, things will move from order to disorder gradually, just like how the universe increases in entropy. In this regard, I think that the morning star, a sort of guiding light, is symbolic of Mornye herself, and she essentially tries to be a beacon or a star amidst the chaos and darkness, which you can see in her Resonator trailer, as well as within her links to Symbolism of stars and Monet, which we discussed previously. Mornye's fourth node in her resonance chain, Latent Variables of the Cosmos, is again a two-part understanding. A latent variable is essentially a factor of something that can't be directly measured, but can be inferred by its effects on other, actually measurable variables. For example, intelligence is a latent variable of a person. You can't really count or measure it precisely. You may say someone is intelligent because they got 92% on a test, because the latent variable, intelligence, is affecting a measurable variable, the test scores. So with that out of the way, Mornye's reference to latent variables in the cosmos is our understanding of space, stars, and the universe based on our observations and what we know. As such, astronomy and cosmology are fields of sciences that process a lot of latent variables, essentially. Mornye's fifth node in the resonance chain, time dilation effect, is probably the hardest to understand. The time dilation effect is something that comes from a theory of relativity developed by Albert Einstein, similar to the mass-energy equivalence we talked about earlier. Basically, to understand this principle, you need to understand that time is not something that is even experienced the same for everything, because there are two things that can affect your perception or experience of time, being speed and gravity. This takes ages to explain, but the TLDR of this is that when you are faster and closer to the approximately 300 million meter per second speed of light, time gets slower. Additionally, when you are under the influence of a higher amount of gravity, your time also slows because stronger gravity causes bigger curves in space-time. This is why, for example, in Interstellar, the main character experiences time so slowly relative to Earth because the planet he's working on is near a black hole, which has an immense gravitational pull. Within Mornye's resonance node, time dilation has the effect of essentially slightly buffing her damage stat values, which kind of makes sense in a way, because time dilation is all about the same concept, being time, increasing under different conditions. And with that, the symbolism and references of Mornye have concluded. As always, if you have anything to add or discuss, feel free to leave a comment. It was quite a hectic time getting this video out with the channel hack and some IRL stuff and things, but we did manage it, so I hope you enjoyed the video. As always, you can support me by commenting, subscribing, even donating or becoming a channel member if you really like what I do. But until then, I hope you have a good day, and I'll see you next time.
Just like the stars never turned for those of us living underground. Yet one day, we will set the entire universe in motion.
Professor Mornye, everything is in place. The high-rise sky needs you to light it.
Time passed, and I finally understood. Who I was praying to that day was the future.